Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode. Honestly, I was pretty exhausted, but I don't know. I thought about that the state of mind I have now is one where I can see certain levels to how the inner realms of the human being can work. Okay. I'm pretty much saying that, like, how far can our understanding of reality go as a human being, as an organism, as a biological system, but also as an abstract cognitive system? You see, the thing about the mind is that the mind is the subjective existence of the brain. Okay. To continue, if a human being was tasked, let me say it this way: a human being is born, and then there's consciousness, and so this consciousness is tasked with processing the information of its awareness, right? Like, so there's one view where we're like, okay, we're a biological evolutionary animal organism, 4.5 billion years in the making, you know, on this planet. So on some level, it's like it's really transcendental to just be the consciousness of a creature. And when we talk about the idea of a mind, so many human beings on this planet have wondered about its idea that it's one of the wonders of the world. You see, there's the seven wonders of the world, where, let me read this for people. Excuse me. You know, it's like some people say, coughing in podcasts, adds a sense of, true originality. The seven wonders of the world, of the ancient world, seem to be the Colossus of Rhodes, the Great Pyramid of Giza, Hanging Gardens of Babylon, Statue of Zeus at Olympia, Temple of Artemis at Ephesus, Mausoleum at Halicarnassus, and Lighthouse of Alexandria. So these are the seven original wonders of the world when they came up with this idea of seven. But I would say there are psychological wonders to the world, right? Because like our ancestors, they were just these unconscious animals in a sort of jungle setting, and so survival eventually shifted from just unconscious reaction to conscious observance and noticing how the world works, right? Like what happened to the human brain is that it attained superiority when it could remember what would happen to it and use that information to change gears. So when we look at evolution, it's as if like, what has evolution done? What has been the point of evolution? Right? Like why are we conscious of our pain? Why are we conscious of our suffering? Right? Why is it that our consciousness, like it's like, when something happens to our body we feel pain, but what if our, like, something happens, I don't know, let's say to someone else, we don't feel pain, right? So where are the limits of human consciousness, or like just being a sort of first person viewer? Like if life was a video game, 100% first person video game, first person shooter. It's so remarkable that everybody's destined to look at their hands. Consciousness is like there's a biological side, okay, but there's also, I would say, you could say like there was a sort of overreacting to the metaphysics of it, in the sense of like the concept of the third eye. But to me, the mind is the third eye. When I can close my eyes and remember an image from yesterday, visualize something from the future, what is that? My eyes are closed, but I can see. That is the mind's eye. And so I've kind of like restructured the whole thing. And in the Mr.Withinian school of thought, I call it the inner realms and outer realms. So there's a world in front of our eyes, and then there's a world behind our eyes, and nobody's talking about the world behind our eyes. And if they are, it's at a cost. Right? So this is where, to me, it's like imagine for eons, or I should say it like this, that imagine duality has been looping. Chaos and order have been just battling infinitely. Until the resolution beyond both arises, that the concept of advancement, I mean, it's not that the idea of sacrifice has no meaning, but I'm saying the concept of advancement means that it doesn't matter if there's duality or not, if there are dimensions beyond duality. And so there's various states. I consider ultimately 4 states. So if somebody says, Mr. Within, what levels to the mind do you see? I see it as what I have to do as a conscious, energetic force in the moment, right? So there's, on some level, the person can choose to identify with the idea of themselves, and then that idea of themselves has a storyline, and that storyline has branches of various memories. It's as if like what we really have been is that what I would say is that we are like this unknown intelligent viewer, right? We're this unknown force looking through our eyes, and it is tunneling through simulations. So the way this world seems to be, the human brain seems to be working, or what we call the mind, is that it's occurring rhythmically, and because it's occurring rhythmically, there's an endless permission to change. So really, human consciousness is reaching a point where it's going to be like, it's like, when are good and evil gonna stop? It's like, when is Batman gonna stop punching Joker, and when is Joker gonna stop being insane? Like, never. Why? Because duality, they're codependent, chaos and order. This is why when somebody tries to be a good person, they will see a lot of bad shit. And let me tell you why. Because rather than it's like rather than getting off this coin spinning in the middle of, let's say, like this, it's like rather than seeing beyond the duality, one can get possessed by a state of mind which is duality. Okay. And it's not like there's something wrong with duality, but like pretty much what human brains are. Like, let's say if we look at a garden and we see different flowers. We look at a garden, we see different types of flowers, right? And at the same time, we see 8 billion human beings. And so it's like this species traveling through the space time continuum on a rock. And we are surviving in an unknown world as a being that is constantly exploring to find new strategies of what it is, right? Rather than people having this judgmental attitude like, yo, that person is a fool. That person is sacred and holy. That person is great. That person is like, it's like we should envision the human species as 8 billion people on a giant boat, and instead of and in this giant boat is in unknown waters, or you could say an unknown cosmos. So really what's going on here is that we are this unknown life force that has opened its eyes as a member of a species that hasn't understood that the greatness of its collective vision and potential is beyond its individual suffering or salvation. Right? Like, what I'm saying is that people are trying to conceptually heal themselves, but you should contextually heal yourself. Right? As if some people, like, contextual healing means that you're already healed. It's like how the Zen masters say, if you want to climb a mountain, start at the top. That means wonder about the furthest edges of what this intelligence is. That is the presence of your moment. And as an individual, as you cultivate this awareness to how your attention is being you as a being, you're going to notice in stillness, you are more identified as a space being. So the more the body is still, the more the mind is kind of like a flashlight left on a table. Do you know what I'm saying? But the awareness of the flashlight to itself becomes very, very kind of like single pointed, right? Now, for me, I have a different view on meditation. For me, meditation is kind of like a phone call, from the universal will. So what I mean is that, like, there's moments in my life where I've been just, going about my day living, and suddenly, just without any reason or, previewed premise, like, I've had moments where I've just felt like I should just stop doing everything. Just as if life was a video game, I pressed pause and I just watched my moment be my moment. And it was like, it fascinated to me that I'm not just a biological physical entity, but I'm simultaneously being and the awareness to the inner event. So what the mind is like an ability to live ahead to live ahead of the body. So now when it comes to the question of what does it mean, levels to the mind, like, this is where it gets really fascinating, because levels to the mind is suggesting how far these biological eyes that give us the geometry of existence, it's like how far can an experiential force convert geometrical existence, the geometry of existence. You see, like, to me, there was a point in my life where I was looking for the perfect story to live in. It sounds strange saying it, but it was like, I would say, I kind of see myself as a story hunter. Like, if our ancestors hunted buffalo, I'm always looking for the greatest stories on this planet. Excuse me, to continue. I don't know. I'm sometimes my attention goes towards like what the mind is. Sometimes it goes to this realization that the purpose of life that for human beings is to first notice what is the contrast to everything else. So it's like we look at lesser species, we look at squirrels and birds, and we're like, they don't care about the climate. They don't care about like the solar system, you know. They don't care about the climate of the cosmos. The creature is just in its own geometrical existential design, right? Like to me, it's like this might be hilarious, but to me, I could see creatures as machines, and by machines meaning that the human being has an ability to repeat and, in some sense, tunnel its way towards its superior archetype. Okay, so when I speak about the nature of mind, I'm like, okay, there's 8 billion creatures on this rock in this world. What is the purpose of evolution so far? What are the clues that history give? That means imagine historians brought forth the content, you know, to, let's say, philosopher and to psychologists and philosophers who, in some sense, what it is that after some point, if there's enough energy, anything can technically be possible because you're always trying to reach it. That means it's as if when the journey never ends. Excuse me, to continue. You know, it's very difficult to speak about the mind because the mind is the one that is speaking. But the mind is a level to reality. So when I say there are different levels to the mind, what the mind is the potential of the body, and evolution directed itself and wanted to separate itself as a subject, right? Like, what's the point of having names as an organism? You know, what's the point of, you know, connecting meaning to sounds and symbols? Like, why have we done this as a species? To me, it's you know, they say in ancient mythology, the parents of the human species were Mother Earth and Father Sky. And so it was like this idea that the children were living with Mother Earth, right? But a part of them wanted to know Father Sky, right? And so that there's this concept, this idea that even though we evolved on this planet, even though we should hug and love our planet, but it doesn't mean we are destined to be here only, right? It's just that when it comes to nature of the mind, it's like opening your eyes in the world and being like, how much of the meaning of everything I'm seeing is subjective, and how are these subjects being positioned as values in a moment, right? So what I'm saying is, like, I think every scholar realizes that at first you're seeking true knowledge, then you train your own attention, and you realize it's like this idea that you must serve before you command. Okay? If somebody was like Mr.Within, what sort of metaphysical levels do you see to existence, and how would you incorporate the mind in that? For me, I would say this is a recent view, but it's this notion that where we are right now is a sort of stage between, it's like we're in a dimension that is between weakness and power. And then there's a dimension between power and service. And that service is the archetype of the servant of God. Okay, but what does that mean, the servant of God? It means the concept has become aware of it, the totality of the context. You know, guys, giving a podcast nowadays, it's like, DJing, writing, speaking at the same time, typing at the same time. Oh my God. What can I say? Levels to the mind. What I see beyond the mind. What is the purpose of intelligence in an unknown world? What's the purpose of intelligence using knowledge to try to comprehend something that is infinitely unknown? The vastness of the cosmos is so ridiculous that I think there's a reason this scientific knowledge is not shared. Right? I think the vastness of the cosmos is kind of like modern forbidden knowledge. But when I say forbidden, is that it's like what is forbidden is that which one can come to fear. Right? So right now the human psychology is just trying to be a human being in a cultural setting, right? It's like what culture allows as being part of the human species is access to let's say, an emotional spectrum, right? But when we wonder about what is the true nature of consciousness, what's the point of having a mind, right? And why was it that somebody asked this patriarch of Buddhism called Bodhidharma? Somebody told him, Bodhidharma, please pacify my mind. And Bodhidharma was like, okay, bring your mind here and I'll pacify it. And the guy couldn't find his mind, and he just looked at Bodhidharma and he's like, I can't find my mind. And he says, there, your mind's pacified. And the guy was suffering, and he realized his suffering was subjective. That means we're not just paying attention to an outer landscape. There's an inner realm. There's a reason why in all the lectures I'm trying to say inner realms as much as possible. I want, if the concept of imagination was the cocoon, the idea of the inner realms is the caterpillar that stepped out of it. It's the next generation's comprehension and trying to realize that really, once we are content with duality, we understand duality instantaneously. Think of it this way. Here, I'll just spill the beans. I see 4 levels to the mind, but I ultimately see those 4 levels being one level. But I see that one level in some sense being a cycle. So if somebody was like, okay, what's the greatest, most advanced potential of the mind? is that we go as far as there's unknown variables in the moment. If somebody gets caught in an ideological system where there's zero unknown variables, like if somebody's asked, hey man, do you know what the meaning of life is? And the person's like, yes, it's it's not that we can't have theories or probabilize, but I'm saying like the meaning of life is like an unknown being realizing the moments being unknown. Simplicity is contentment with an unknown context. So it's like the person's like, okay, there's a known self, and then there's an unknown self. So there's a body, then there's a mind. And what is the mind? The mind is kind of like the theater of subjectivity, where it literally, like if somebody says, how would I say it? It's like where what thoughts are inner events that we get to see, but if some others in the future maybe can see our inner realms, you know? Like this is really fascinating that right now there's a veil between the object and the subject within consciousness. And what will happen to this veil, whether it becomes transparent and dissolves? For me, I thought about it for a while and I came up with this concept called the ring of the absent heaven. And so what it is that I'm saying, okay, there's 4 dimensions that everything can potentially happen through. The first dimension, pretty much this is it, 0, 1, 2, infinity. Like the infinity symbol. I don't have a notepad here, but if I did, that would be like I'd write 0, 1, 2, infinity. That's my whole school of thought. When I look at anything, like all philosophical thoughts, all contexts of reality come to this. That means we start off as being this ignorant, dualistic, like, savage animal. And then we realize, wait a minute, no, the human being can learn from its mistakes, meaning it can comprehend and restructure its own engagement with future dualistic archetypes, right? That means it's like before a person wonders about what is good and bad, we have to wonder about how a brain is projecting persona to be a character in a storyline, right? There's subjective narratives all the time. Right, like the reason human beings have like the reason we can even speak, like it's because there's a sort of what is behind our eyes is hidden to what is in front. It's strange. It's like behind our eyes. Like if somebody closed their eyes and they thought, let's say, they tried to remember who they were yesterday, it's as if they are the unknown viewer of yesterday's memory. So when we close our eyes, we are an unknown viewer of a moment that is being the whole moment. But when we open our eyes, we are an individual organism, like, let's say, first person viewpoint. So when it comes to the nature of mind, I don't know, every person has a different DNA, meaning that like every person is like what evolution is and what, let's say, potentially the purpose of life could be is to use what we are as a human species. That means it's as if we're like, okay, there's the concept of the ending that is inevitable, and what is beyond the ending, it's as if life is a preparation for the unknown inevitability, for the inevitable return to the unknown. And what is the unknown? It's how the nature of attention is, right? Like when I think about, okay, how many types of ways can the world exist? Because what the mind is being how the whole moment is aware of itself. Sometimes I wonder, am I in a world or am I how the whole world is being? At what point can free will not be capable to decide? What is the universal will? It's like it seems in modern academia there's this view that free will is an illusion, that concept of ourself is an illusion. And they're like, okay, the brain's hallucinating an internal subjective landscape, right? And so at the same time, because it's a projection of the body, it is as void as the body. This is the fallacy. It's as if, how can we, it's like history cannot be written about, or how should I say it? Like, when I think about what an organism can be, it's all about how the attention moves. The attention can choose to look at the moment and be like, all of this means nothing. Everything is actually nothing, you know? But somebody can be like, okay, this view of the world is actually singular. Everything is one truth, one greatness, one victory, one salvation, da 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 da. You know? Really, what it is that one cannot be free. Like the human species has a sort of lion type, like a lion type of nature. Okay? The coyote eats other, let's say, corpses, but the lion has to hunt itself to, like, eat the animal, right? So similarly, the human mind can't trust anything outside of its own creation. This is why Galileo even says, the only way to teach someone is to make them realize it within themselves. Something in these lines. Ultimately, I'm left with how my mind has occurred. I would say that from the beginning of my life, the earliest memory I have of my life was just being a kid in a room and just being a moment of sight, no personality, nothing. And then we see what the human being is. It's like so many levels present at once. So at some point we have to choose out of infinite possibilities of geometrical movement what geometry to embrace as a context to our life's meaning, right? So when we wonder about the levels of the mind, we're wondering about the potential of this temporary organism to see how advanced can the moment be. Because why is consciousness here? You see, it's like there's this power present within the world, but this power doesn't know what to do. It's like there's unlimited energy, but what do we do with it, right? And so it's as if it's hilarious because it's like this. The fascination of it is that infinity converts into the void. If somebody was like, "How do I transcend beyond infinity?" It's like that's why I say ring of the absent heaven. So I could look at this moment and the context could be nothing. The context could be a sort of singularity of meaning. The context of it could be a duality, like the idea of a self in a world. The idea of good and evil, the idea of right and wrong. What are these? These are occurrences of the human brain, right? I think like what's going to happen when super intelligent computers, like, you know, super intelligent computers appear, let's say, super intelligence is invented. Like we're gonna have like the leaders of humanity go very kindly and be like, okay, at super advanced AI, give us all the probabilities of all the better ways, or all the different, what's the best way for the human species to live, right? And imagine this super intelligent computer came up with a strategy, right? And what the strategy was would eventually be the same conclusion that the archetype of the most advanced, right? For me, I was going through life, and I always felt there was something missing, and I can't tell you, I found the treasure of the idea of the Kant's archetype of the spirit of advancement. You see, the nature of being a unique individual is that you are your own dimension internally. But externally, existence is its own show, and we're just an actor. Right? So it's kind of like strange, because it's like a subject is moving an object, but at the same time, the object changes and the subject changes, and there's something that is aware of it all. We are, consciousness is the presence. It's how space is living through whatever it's in it. You know, it's like sometimes I think the concept of God and the concept of space, and these two archetypes, if they are infused, it would be as if we are in the imagination of God. We are being the mind of God right now. Right? So how does the mind work? The mind works based on the projection of attention. You know, so it's very poetic, because it's as if like one can choose to see to, like, I mean, if we have to, let's say, weave all the mystery of all dimensions of reality into a story, the doors of heaven were always open. And it's kind of like eternity's temporary journey. When you realize that like there's an unknown self, the unknown self is the abstract potential of the most advanced, let's say, archetype that you can, you know, that is revealed out of your own unconscious. You see, in the future, human beings are going to have incredible awareness to their inner realms. And what the inner realms is how you're being a sort of singular space, and whatever moves in that space is constantly kept in an awareness of a dualistic context. Right? That means it's as if something's happening as this like existential event is happening, and consciousness is allowing this existential this existential event of this biological system in this world, like this existential event, to be converted into an experiential event, which becomes an inner memory, and this inner memory can be pulled back later from the unconscious or the void, or it can, in some sense, we wait for it to arrive. Right? For me, when it comes to like podcasting or just any moment of communication, I have understood like to start from a simple position, and then it's as if like once we realize what is looking at the moment is unknown, and once we realize the edge of the world is unknown, and once we realize on a rock in the middle of nowhere, creatures opened their eyes, freaked out and didn't know what to do, as there was so much nothingness and meaninglessness, and just like, what do we do with the world this fast? And so the human species, the reaction of the human species to the void was the birth of language. It's kind of like we evolved beyond an object into an inner subject, and we were not, and now human beings are capable of being aware of an outer environment and to close their eyes and be aware of an inner environment, right? Like if like imagination is like free virtual reality, to be honest, right? And its speed is dependent on how the context one holds. For me, I'm like, okay, the brain is an evolutionary opportunity to communicate. When I wonder about all the technologies of the world, there's external technologies, but there's inner technologies. The mind's vision suggests the type of energy the mind will have, and that will suggest the archetype that will find the mind. I really hope this isn't on mute. Oh, okay, it isn't. Okay. Excuse me. Here's the thing. Based on the context we hold to the moment, we can move in the moment. If I think about if I think of my mind as separate to me, then I could see levels to it. Like sometimes it's very easy to see levels to other people's minds than to see levels to one's own mind. In the Upanishads, they say the seer of the seer cannot be seen. It's another way of saying nobody can see their soul. All those people thinking their soul is like a ghost, that's not like the view. The view is that the soul is the idea we give of that which is aware of how the mind is happening. And what the universe is in the inner realms is the nature of the mind. And what the mind is the potential of the body, and something strange is a sort of, I think, sort of self-generating strategy. Like, just think about it. Like, what is the purpose of seeking something new as an evolutionary strategy? Like, so many human beings go to school, but they don't realize it's like the whole thing is in the unknown. So the ultimate levels to the mind is like, what do we do in the unknown? To continue, the furthest levels to the mind is the recognition that the unknown watcher, there's an unknown viewing force. So it's another way of saying we discovered the known self, we discovered the known world, we wondered about what's the greatest potential of the known self and the known world, and then we realized the unknown. It's as if it's like the idea of metaphysics is this profound notion of what comes after the physics. Metaphysics means that like the word after, right? So in some sense, what comes after physics is it's like this realization that what physical experience is like a cognitive system and a biological system are occurring instantaneously. The biological system is dualistically conditioned. The psychological system is instantaneously conditioned. So what is going on to the initial nature of mind is that we're like this spotlight of this presence of attention that is the whole moment. And so the spotlight that is the presence of this, like that, what I'm saying is your mind is like this giant, you're in the center of this giant sphere that is endless, that is endlessly expanding. And so what the nature of the mind is the potential of intelligence to grow. You know, when we look at when we look at the evolutionary human being, the bigger the organism is, the slower the gradual evolutionary change and adaptation is, right? But when we look at a butterfly, or when we look, I mean, like, let's say when we look at a caterpillar, this, like, to me, if somebody says, Mr. Within, like, what is the most, like, which insect is the most enlightened, I would say, like, the caterpillar and the butterfly. You know, the most fascinating creature. We evolved so long, but it's like the caterpillar converts, its genes convert into a completely different design, right? Imagine us at the end of our life, instead of dying, like, you know, our bodies turning into a cocoon, and then like us becoming completely different beings that stepped out of this cocoon. Right? I mean, like, that's super abstract, but but what I'm saying is, what is the potential of the nature of the attention? What I realized is that the more emotionally I decided, or I held my view in the moment, the emotions went towards a sort of warmth of comfort. But when I wondered about what is the raw geometry of the living earth, you see, at some point, it's not a person. It's like the mask is taken off, and that veil between the conscious and the unconscious disappears when consciousness realizes self and world are simultaneous. So what the mind is an ability to convert reality into subjective probabilities ahead of time. We literally are creatures that are behaving like a time machine. Like we can remember yesterday. Like the memory of the organism is like the first sort of example of a time machine invented on the planet. I think that's a really cool thing to say. The biological organism is the first time machine. Because we can remember yesterday, and like, okay, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's technically time travel. A person is dreaming, suddenly they hear their alarm clock, and a different reality enters that unknown view of the whole known moment. You know, for me, I'm like, okay, what's the great problem to solve? Imagine somebody who prays to truth and says, "Oh world, oh might and truth and power of the world, what is the greatest puzzle, or I shouldn't say greatest puzzle, what is the greatest problem to solve in all of manifestation and world? What is the greatest approach? What is the greatest view of the world?" Now that's when we're ready to wonder about the levels of the mind, when we have the curiosity about the potentials of how far it can go. For me, there's something very geometric about my mind. That means, think of it this way: the more personified you personify your inner realms, the more scared or emotional you can become. But if a person first trains their mind So imagine there was a kid back in the day in battle, right? And his father, was a great warrior, and in some sense, imagine this is a story of legend, right? And in this story, here I'll tell you this bizarre story from Persian mythology. Honestly, I don't know all the details of the story, but the story is there was this sort of divine warrior, this undefeatable warrior named Rostam, in back in the day like this is in, let's say, ancient Persia, or just wherever it was. I mean, it's mythologies written by poets. So Rostam is this undefeatable warrior. No being can defeat his might and force and presence. And one day he has a son, and the son is delivered, right? And Rostam, this mighty warrior, he just puts an emblem on the child, and he tells the wife, "Tell your son to always wear this," you know. Gives this special band, right? And so, let's say on the right arm or something, he says. And so what happens is he leaves and he goes to war and battle, and he, like, walks with emperors into battlefields and whatnot. And he's this archetype of the undefeatable, the greatest warrior. One day, years have passed. Many warriors from the world have come and challenged Rostam, and Rostam's like defeated them all. And one day, excuse me, and one day, a warrior arrives and challenges Rostam, the undefeatable warrior. And this is where, like, this is the main part of the story, where this warrior starts fighting Rostam, and Rostam suddenly sees there's something about the presence, the aura, and the greatness of this person that's fighting him. The more he's fighting this opponent, the more he's remembering his own younger self. But Rostam is the archetype of the undefeatable warrior, as if that was his desire, that's what the archetype he had been received, the divine archetype. A great battle ensues, and there's other great warriors that witness this. And so this battle is so incredible that Rostam instantly realizes nobody on this planet has ever fought on this level with him. Do you know? But Rostam defeats him, as if there was additional levels of hidden power to experience in battle. So Rostam defeats this guy, but as he's defeating this warrior, the warrior looks at Rostam in his eyes with a sort of hate and anger, with a sort of rage and wrath, as if you fool, And so this is this very bizarre moment where Rostam checks finds the band on the guy's right arm, and his son's name is, that guy's name is called Sorab, I think. Like, people in the comment section, you can probably correct me. But anyways, he realizes, in achieving the ultimate, he attained a sort of ignorance to the decency of what was behind what he was fighting. I want to share something with the viewers. And okay, it's unreadable. Sorry guys, I'm trying to find this image. Pretty much I want to explain how Freud perfect, guys. I found the most perfect image. I just want to say how, like in Freudian thought, they approach this. You know, this podcast is pretty much, you know, the futurism of a tired person, you know. Excuse me. Here, I think the viewers can see it. If you look at the screen, you can see these two pictures. And I don't know why they're so small. Like, who's putting small pictures of important information on that? Like, that should be like... Okay, it's somehow readable. That's not too bad. Alright. So if the viewers, you know, can just, for one moment, just look at this. Or whatever, I'm just gonna explain it so it doesn't matter. But, so, I mean, this is Freud's view, and there's Jung's view, and pretty much there's the possibility of 8 billion human beings. If 8 billion human beings cared to try to solve the problem that Carl Jung and Freud were solving, they could all be psychologists. Because really what it is that we're in this hilarious state of this all-you-can-dream, you know, subjective buffet, you know. We're literally a creature that can use our energy of observance, and we can observe reality, and it's as if we're present. What consciousness is like It's literally we're like a candle, and our mind is the glow, and the brain is the candle flame. Or the brain is the flick of the candle, and the mind is the candle flame. And this light illuminates reality. Here, Freud and, prior to Jung is saying the conscious mind, it contains all the thoughts, memories, or feelings that we experience at any given moment. Yeah, it's pretty much like what is in the scope of your attention in an instant. It's like the here and now's, actuality in the moment. Just like it's what's in the spotlight of your immediate attention. The preconscious mind consists of the information that can be retrieved from memory. Right, so what does that mean? Consists of the information that can be retrieved from memory, so it's a sort of relationship with the past, as if the past is living in the in the preconscious or subconscious, call it. I think Jung called it subconscious. I don't know who called it that. Well, pretty much the idea that, okay, so right now, for example, as I'm giving this talk, there's a part of me that's like my conscious attention in the moment. Then there's the preconscious, how my inner realms are moving. Then the unconscious mind, and this is where I have come to experience, it's that the whole moment is just being the moment. As if there were greater dimensions to reality, they would not have a concept of suffering. Right? Like duality is 1/4 of life. 1/4 of it is the number 0, 1/4 of it is the number 2, and 1/4 of it is the infinity symbol. That means, where can our dreams go? Where can the future go? Why is consciousness in an unknown world? Right? Like if we see this example of this iceberg, the conscious mind. This is what we have. This is what free will is using. It's as if somebody in a dream, like something happening and the whole dream being automated, and waking up and being like, yo, where was my free will? What really our free will is how far our vision is. Like isn't it fascinating? We see a world, and sight converts into linguistic symbolism, into language, and really what's going on is we are creatures that are subjectively trying to survive inside a story. So the story we tell ourselves becomes our world. So if we wonder about what's the greatest story beyond all the stories ever in human stories, right? For me, I'm like the advanced civilization. The idea of the advanced civilization is like, is the human species going to witness its greatness before it no longer can? That's the thing. How advanced is the human species? We could look at the shadow of the species, or we could look at the light of it, I think what's going to happen in the future is that people are going to get bored of duality. So an era of new types of human archetypes is going to occur. Just like how AI can just create ridiculous amounts of like novelty out of nowhere, right? So the human mind begins having a sort of classification system based on the speed of how fast the reality is changing. So really what it is like to wonder about the levels of the mind, is to wonder about how the energy in the moment is animating reality. How's the moment happening? To me, the moment is being itself, but based on, what it is? It's like consciousness is like this, because we can see the world can relate to us. It's honestly fascinating. It's like the chicken and the egg issue, like which came first? Do we need consciousness? Do we need a mind before we can know we exist as a body? Or do we need to exist as a body before we can know we're a mind? What is the nature of our mind? What if this whole time, regardless of what we think we are, the brain is an antenna? And this antenna is receiving various signals of reality. Literally, what being a human being is tunneling through, journeying through the information age. I thought about it that the past is past. Many sages and scholars have said this: the past is past. The present is just present. Like the enlightenment of the present is like, okay, I'm here and the world is here and everything is here and truth is here and everything, and so it's like, that's it. They see it like that. But to me, it's like, what do we do when we realize we're an unknown being in an unknown world, and knowledge is the technology we're using? So we are all just explorers. It's like we're honestly like 8 billion reincarnations of a question mark. Whoever you are, my ultimately, if the mind just, if the person just goes towards a geometrical and information and analytical oriented reality, after some point they're going to forget that it's like once the ultimate archetype of greatness is achieved, that means, imagine we were right now inside the advanced civilization and we were like, what do we do now? And so it's like the context is victorious, the individual is victorious, and so the concept of defeat is, it's like, let's say it no longer exists in the most advanced way that the human species could happen, and it went towards the inconceivable. It's honestly like a stage where this unknown intelligence that is performing as an organism in a cosmic stage. And so that's when life becomes really fulfilling, because the freedom of the mind has to do with the question the person's mind has. Like, if anybody wants to know how advanced their mind is, they have to try to find out what's the most fascinating question. What's one question that would be the ultimate question? For me, that ultimate question in certain moments has been like, why is existence noticing itself existing as a subject? So it's being an object that's noticing itself as a subject. We see something in front of our eyes, we see something behind our eyes, we notice we're seeing both of them at the same time. Anybody who visualizes something with their eyes open, that's exactly what's happening. It's like an inner subjective event is overlaid upon an outer objective event. So we're aware of both of them simultaneously. So it's kind of like, it's like chaos and order are just, it's just dualities, a world. Dualities dimension. Ultimately, if a person realizes, let's say somebody wants to cultivate mastery in these 4 dimensions, so the person has to be content with the void, the person has to be content with the singular, the person has to be content with the dual, the person has to be content with the infinite, and the person has to be content with the infinite cycle, and beyond the infinite cycle, the presence of the void. the greatness of energy, like the most advanced archetype, is no longer human. You know, that means it's hilarious. The most advanced state of reality is beyond reality. So what it is we are, consciousness is surfing, you know, a world, an unknown world. We're explorers. Or in Mr.Within thought, I would say we're advanced communicators. To me, the human species is kind of like Uncle Ben looking at Spider-Man and being like, with great power comes great responsibility. Our species has an ability to notice so much ahead in time. That means sometimes when I wonder about like if there was a utopic reality, let's say, I don't know how to say it, but let's say there was a world where there was more efficiency than inefficiency in the world. You know what it is? It's kind of like instead of people having fear, we realize we just honor the existential opportunity. It's like a neo-transcendental royalty, right? Like to me, to be a human being, it's like I ask myself what's honorable about being a human being, right? And I think about what's honorable about the human being is to access sight that no other species can. Now, what if we could collectively access this sight? That means sometimes I'm very fascinated. What is a collective in mind like, right? That means imagine the person first was like weak, then the person attained power, then the ultimate power realized the greatest power is service. And so once the person decided to serve truth, and let's say they became a servant of God or the servant of what their ultimate pure original value to everything is. Once you become a servant, let's say to your true nature, not to some ideology or a subject or idea, something like the it's the unknown greatness of the moment in some sense. That means divinity is a sort of inconceivable greatness. It's a way where there's no mistakes, just the magnificence of the ultimate projected within man. You see, sometimes it's what the mind is how our soul is experiencing life as through space. It's like our soul, we don't just have a soul in a body. Our soul is also inside space as our mind. But what the soul is beyond an object and subject. So it's kind of like this puzzle of being like, wait a minute, as the Upanishads say, the seer of the seen is unseen. So it's another way of saying I can't look at the one that's looking. Like I can't see a shape to that which is seeing a shape. So you can't see this that which is the so you can't see the one that is looking, right? Now this is why is this super fascinating, right? Because it's a sort of it's like we've reached a moment where we're noticing something unknown is happening where subjects cannot explain. True mysticism means like, what do you do in an unknown world? Somebody's like, what's the best advice to like handling levels of the mind? Just wonder about why there's an ability to a species in the void. To me it's so bizarre. Like when I think about like if I was in, let's say, if I don't know, sometimes I wonder, this is like hypothetical and subjective, but if I was in like if I was in a position where I was like a sort of, let's say, in a sort of sci-fi parallel universe, if I wanted to care for the true value of the human species, I would ask myself, should I value the human species objectively or subjectively, or the potential of using the object and subject, as the poet Rumi says, like wings of a bird? You see, it's just like the airbender. Let's say there were, like, some schools of thought there were 5 elements, and other schools of thought there were 4, like earth, air, fire, water. And in some schools, earth, air, fire, water, space. So in let's say in Mr.Within thought, I am seeing 0, 1, 2, infinity. Right? So if I was to think about the infinite is a gate, a portal to the inconceivable. If I think about duality is an access point to infinity. When I think about singularity, the singularity is complete. Like, this is why in so many schools of thought, truth is singular. And so why is truth singular? Because the purpose of life is rendered void, and it's given meaning again through a different context. Like, it's so fascinating. We're not just living in outer life. Everybody's living an inner life, but because we're so focused on thinking the shape of the outer realms is the full totality of the meaning, we're forgetting what it's so strange. It's like an abstract subject is moving, and physical, a real object, and so the object object is also simultaneously projecting it, and we're like, okay, what is moving here? The biological body or the free will? Is the free will independent to the biological body? Could the mind be poetically the known Iron Man suit of the unknown soul? And the concept of the soul is that just the realization the unknown was here before known. So people who really go towards truth, you're going pretty much towards the unknown, but that's the nature of reality. I feel like our ancestors back in the day hunted, and what was it called? Like in hunter-gatherer societies. They hunted and gathered. And right now, it's all just happening in the inner realms. People are trying to find new information, new ideas, new vision, new content. In an endless world, we're trying to, people care. It's like, what do we do with an infinite existence? It's like we say a story at least. It's all the potential of the void. It's all the great performance. The ultimate vision is to realize there's something here. It has a potential. How do we get 8 billion human beings to build the most advanced civilization the cosmos has ever known? Right now, people are stuck in cultural archetypes, Sometimes when I look at the sky, I feel like, there will come a day where we will live there. Honestly, I don't know what else to say. This is one of those. Just give it a try episodes, So anyways, levels to the mind. I'm pretty much saying, like, we're present in consciousness and we have an ability to see geometry. So really what the meaning of life is what sort of subjective geometrical structure are we giving to the moment, and how does that subjective structure act as a meaning, right? There's moments in my life where I wonder about what is the inspiration of awareness. Like imagine a yogi sitting in stillness and being like, okay, what's the point and presence of being this stillness of one moment? What's the point of everything being oneness? It's like oneness is dehumanized. So really what's going to happen in the future is that we're going to see psychological advancement, meaning we're going to see human behavior never witnessed before. But now the decision comes to what caliber. And I have this vision that there's going to arise a new language, and it's going to be a geometrical language, right? So if extraterrestrials would see us, they won't just see the alphabet. It would be a sort of geometrical painting, you know? Some sort of, neo hieroglyphs. I don't know what to call it. I just see potential. That's it. If the human species didn't have a potential, it's like there would be no point, right? It's like why play the game if you believe you can't win, right? So the human species, the mentality of 8 billion creatures have to be like, we all have to pause our storylines of suffering and joy, of artificial sorrow and artificial happiness, and every human being has to wonder about how their attention is being the central position, as if your mind is how you are being, and how you are being is not just your thought, but it's the presence of your whole moment. When I say our mind is being the whole moment, it's another way of saying that the world, or I should say differently, truth never went anywhere. The simulation was a simulation to itself, right? I sometimes wonder that sort of metamorphosis of the caterpillar, what sort of metamorphosis is happening to the human being. And I don't know why, but I feel if technology becomes the main interest of the species, like external technology, we're pretty much going to seek, our ultimate desires are going to reach dehumanized limits. So what that means is right now it's only human psychology on the planet, regardless of how stable in each individual human psychology is, but it's just human psychology. But imagine in the very far future, like I've written about this in my sci-fi novels, right? Imagine in the far future, there's androids walking in the streets, there's extraterrestrials walking in the streets, there's animals with advanced AI, or some technology connected to them walking as conscious individuals in the streets, Imagine there's like holograms of wisps of people who are who don't want to leave their house, but it's like they still want to go get something from outside, as a wisp. I don't know how to say it, but it's like holograms are going to be walking in the streets. They're going to be kind of like technological ghosts. But I'm saying when a person, and even the concept of clones and I don't know, whatever sort of bizarre archetype is out there, it's like there's a whole spectrum of it. For me, I just ask myself, okay, what is the main value of consciousness that's present in the moment? This is the ultimate question. In every moment, that's how the mind works. It is just present, and based on how much it trusts reality, its realness is there. The levels of the mind, just an ability to discriminate. Here, I'll give you an example of how my inner realms work. I can, for example, tell the viewers that if somebody told me, Mr. Within, imagine a glowing golden apple in the sky, right? And imagine I envisioned this glowing golden apple in the sky. It would be as if my experience of my own mind is that how my consciousness saw my imagination, it was in front of me. Do you know? So what I'm saying is, like, it's like the soul is watching through the goggles of the mind a simulation of the body, you know, and it's like a character inside a video game suddenly realizing something unknown is moving it. But, you know, really to wonder about levels of the mind, it's like it's saying, like, what are the levels of the mind in an unknown world where man created language to create a sort of miniature dimension of meaning, right? It's as if the whole the human species had to lie to itself to be able to be honest to itself inside a simulation. For me, I was like, what is the smartest thing to do on this planet? Is to wonder about what the most advanced state, like what would the most advanced state of being of 8 billion, let's say, creatures on a rock in the middle of nowhere be? Like, what's the most advanced thing we can do as a species? And really what it is to solve problems and to keep solving problems at a faster pace and at the same time exploring, you know? So what it is we've reached a time where back in the day our ancestors too quickly settled into answers for context to the meaning of life, right? But now we're reaching a point where there's so many ways that we can look at something that we're like, what's the meaning of sight at all, right? And the meaning of sight is what we can do with everything we've seen. You know, sometimes I wonder what will happen in the future. Who will I be, or what will I be, or where will I be beyond this? And you know what I realized? I realized the dance of time is irrelevant to the viewer of it. So if somebody asked me, Mr. Within, who are you? I would say, it's like a species awakens from a subjective and objective slumber. We're all in a sort of ideological I think it's, you know, I should probably end this talk, you know. And some people will be like, Mr. Within, you should have ended it moments ago. And I'd be like, if I had ended it moments ago, you couldn't have said that now. You know? The nature of the human mind is it gets bored. And it's as if we got bored of being an object. We evolved into a subject. And then this subject got bored of just being just the presence of the moment. And eventually one realizes it's like beyond stories and journeys. Like we can live in this world as if we're the presence of the world. You know, for me, I was like, no way. My whole life I thought I was my name. Then I realized I'm how the whole world is happening at once. You know? It's kind of like, you know, an eternal being, like, you know, inside a temporary vehicle. It's like, honestly, my soul is like this unknown piloting force of how my free will chooses out of all that I can observe in the moment for there to be an action. There's so many ways to discover and wonder about levels to the mind, and we get evidence of the levels of the mind when we see the artwork. And for example, in the dimension of music, like we can truly see levels to the mind. Like a composer has to see, like, levels to the mind, or a conductor on stage. So for me, I ask myself, how advanced is the mind going to be? And what is this interface access? Okay, and I totally forgot to talk about this. Hopefully I could find the right music right now. Oh my god. The body is a singular existential event. The mind is a sort of psychological experience that is filtered through the rhythmic occurrence of the body. Because we're inhaling, exhaling, it's like our body, in order to stay alive, is interacting with the atmosphere, with the world. It's kind of strange, but we're like breathing in the cosmos. Can you imagine a chef, like like in one of these chef shows, the chef looks at the food of like the disciple or whoever and says, like, this food like reminds me this food reminds me of how this food smells like how the Andromeda galaxy and the Milky Way galaxy would collide like trillions of years from now. Imagine who knows I'm just saying, the past is past, the present is just the potential, is left to the potential of the past, and the future is left. Our ancestors were living for our future. When we wonder about the future of the human species, we're like, is it going to go towards the void? Is it going to go towards a singularity? Is it going to go to stay inside a duality? Or is it going to go towards infinity? Right? Like if people wonder if the future is going to be religious, that means, is the future going to be still singular, or is the future going to be so ridiculously multidimensional that the attention of the human being is going to what is new? The nature of our eyes, the nature of who we are, the presence of our being, the different levels of our mind is how we look at the world, really. Imagine you cultivate contentment with the void. The person's like, all right, a majority of the world is space, so I gotta become content with space. So a person can become content with space when they wonder about the simple view on space and the complex view. So once you're content with simple space and complex spaces, then the mind can move beyond that archetype. It's as if our free will is here to have our poetically our unknown soul acknowledge the known conscious mind's archetype, the known archetype. It's a sense of self. It's like it's so strange. It's like Tony Stark had the Iron Man suit, and every human being on Earth had imagination. The future can be incredible if we discover and find the space and create the opportunity for it. For me, the cosmos is like this massive chess game. And what a chess, it's, or I should say differently, it's like a multidimensional system. My whole life I thought that my eyes had the significance of where they were, and then I realized who I was not an idea. The moment I realized I've had so many ideas on who I think I am, that it's like at some point I can't be an idea anymore. And I shouldn't say I can't be an idea, but what I'm saying is like Ludwig Wittgenstein, this German philosopher, said the limits of my language are the limits of my world. And I'm realizing that to some degree, like subjects, it's just like I can move my body, I can close my eyes and move my inner realms in subjective reality. For me, it's the human species has to honor the collective archetype of being part of a species. Like it's like a sort of membership that we didn't have to pay for. Was like everybody is a member of the human species. So every person is an ambassador of how great the human species can be. For me, you know what it is? I want to see a future that is fascinated, and it's kind of like just like Olympians pass the torch to one another. I want to see like every generation of the human species just attempting the most advanced, whatever it is, in whatever field they are, wherever they are. If the guy's a chef, it's like wonder about the most advanced state. If you're a chess player, wonder about the most advanced state. If you're a writer, wonder about the most advanced state. And at some point we realize the most advanced stage is to seek power. After achieving ultimate power, power has no need to prove to itself it has power, so it has no reason to show its power. So power becomes service, which means it becomes peace. The peace of truth, P-E-A-C. And so once it has become the peace of truth, it learns to be with truth. It's as if poetically, once you have served God, I'm saying this poetically, guys, once you have served God, it's as if then the next thing is to learn to be with God. And once you have learned to be with God, you learn to live in God's eyes. And once you learn to live in God's eyes, you realize God's eyes are not separate from it. And you know what that means? That means the greatest faith of a known creature in a changing world is to realize the unknown is looking for the knowledge. So what it means is just contentment. We have one lifetime. It's like, imagine like 100 years and 8 billion creatures. Like, it's ridiculous. It's kind of like a problem with its own structure. It's like we have 8 billion creatures on the planet right now in 2022. 8 billion human beings. And so each of these human beings has an inner realm and they each have an outer realm, and based on their memory and journey and life, they have an attitude towards the world. So what it is that people don't just have different DNA, they have different psychological expressions of their DNA. Just like a plant sprouts from the seed becomes the flower, similarly the human biological organism becomes the expression of the communication of an entity in a world. So we are already living in an advanced world just by being creatures that are communicating. But at the same time, I wonder about what is the evolution of communication, and I realize the more we know, the more we have to become responsible for the knowledge, right? So to me, I'm kind of seeing like, okay, we use infinite knowledge as a way to mask the unknown until people are ready to look at the unknown. And the cool thing about the unknown is that the unknown is where new knowledge is found. Novelty is the soul's remembrance of sort of its infinite potential. It's strange. The mind is a receiver. It's like the brain is receiving the world. The brain is converting the world into a mind. Like, how fascinating is that idea? You know, there's moments where I think like, am I existing right now? What is it? And then I wonder about, is my existence subjectively being experienced by my consciousness, which is this first person point of viewer, and I can't even see what's looking through because it's like the observer is not limited to the object of its observance. You know, it's like the person wondering, looking at the yin-yang symbol and being like, I see the circle that holds them all. And so the truth of man is the most advanced potential. That means for me, the archetype of greatness is the most advanced performance of the human species. That's it. If we attempted just to get to see what the most advanced civilization would look like. Like, isn't that the most incredible idea? To me, the idea of the advanced civilization is like, what is a greater idea than that? Imagine an educational system shifted, and something occurred called advanced education, which meant trying to solve problems so beyond the individual local sphere of the experience of the human being. It's as if we're going to have human beings attempt to solve, like, just like imagine in this anime called Shingeki no Kyojin, just like they were titans. It's like for the greatest philosophers and scholars and all human beings on this planet, there's colossal questions that nobody has answered, and these questions are about the macro context of reality. It's like wondering about truth, wondering about the false, wondering about truth, wondering about the ultimate ability of truth, realizing the ultimate ability of truth is the benevolence of truth. And so once one reaches the station of benevolence, they're free from archetypal existence. Why? Because the world is enlightened before anything within it needs to be. When I say mankind rise, it's as if I'm saying, like, how far will this species go? That means sometimes when I feel like, hopeless, I'm like, yo, the species is here, but how far is it gonna go? How much of the current world is going to be forgotten? How many new things are going to occur? How much is going to are we going to become creatures in the future that forget how to naturally exist? Is psychological experience going to be way more fascinating? Like, that's the future. The future, like right now, human beings, let's say consciousness in the moment, has a biological life. And then it has a sort of linguistic, subjective life as a sort of character and name. And then it has a sort of, what's the term? I don't know how to say it. Let me just say there's so many ways the psychology can manifest. I don't know. It's all vision oriented. It's like consciousness is here to see things. And once it sees things, it interacts with sight, right? So consciousness, one thing we can say every type of consciousness has in common is that within the sight there's information. It's like, is the human being the information, or is the information there? You know, like which one's first? Like, are we the periodic table first, or are we our personality first? Anyways, this talk has to end, I feel. Anyways, guys, thanks for listening. You know, if people like the video, maybe this, you know, kid in the picture of the video can cheer up. I should probably read some mind quotes, though. I think that would be a good idea. Okay, Advaita Vedanta quotes. I think this is something. Shri Nisargadatta Maharaj says self-realization definitely comes first. The mind cannot go beyond itself by itself, it must explode. Oh my god. Shri Nisargadatta Maharaj says it does not matter much what happens, for ultimately the return to balance and harmony is inevitable. The heart of things is at peace. Shri Nisargadatta Maharaj says the limited is bound to be painful and pleasant in turns. If you seek real happiness, unassailable and unchangeable, you must leave the world with its pains and pleasures behind you. Frode Gåsland, silence went to see the ego, but there was nobody home. Wow, wow, wow. This is a sort of, there was a museum for the greatest quotes, like this would be in it. This quote should be in it. And it's so great I can't even pronounce like the last name. You know? You know, honestly, I feel like, you know, I should stop giving these talks, but you know, it's Christmas. Here, I know what's good to read here. Okay, these are just quotes from the Upanishads. Okay, I found some website with quotes of, from the Upanishad. Maybe this is worth reading. And if some people are like, Mr.Within, is the talk still continuing? I'll be like, I guess so. The Maitri Upanishad says there is something beyond our mind which abides in silence within our mind. It is the supreme mystery beyond thought. Let one's mind and one's subtle body rest upon that and not rest on anything else. See, the supreme mystery beyond thought. Even the ancient books are saying, yeah, there's something unknown going on here. The person's like, if I want to be honest, it's like nothing is experiencing itself through everything as an individual in a cosmos. It's like a field of intelligence interacting to the particle is nothing technically. In the Mundaka Upanishad, it says, as the web issues out of the spider and is withdrawn. I don't know if these are accurate quotes, guys, but maybe it's worth reading. In the Mundaka Upanishad, it says, as the web issues out of the spider and is withdrawn, as plants sprout from the earth, as hair grows from the body, even so the sages say, this universe springs from the deathless. Wow. Wow. This universe springs from the deathless. That means our whole lives we're fearing something that it's like has there's nothing to fear. Like nothingness has nothing to fear. The Avaduta Upanishad said, as the ocean into which all waters flow maintains its own nature despite the water pouring in from all sides, so he alone attains peace into whom all desires flow in like manner, not he who seeks the objects of pleasure. So here it says, so he alone attains peace into whom all desires flow in like manner, not he who seeks the objects of pleasure. Yeah, it's as if when you live life as a mind, you're experiencing more from the position of an observer. So the mind is an observing force, like the self is an observer, and the world is what is being observed. In the Shvetashvatra Upanishad, it says, with earnest effort, hold the senses in check, controlling the breath, regulate the vital activities. As a charioteer holds back his restive horses, so does a persevering aspirant restrain his mind. In the Shvetashvatra Upanishad, it says, the soul is born and unfolds in a body, with dreams and desires and the food of life. And then it is reborn in new bodies in accordance with its former works. The quality of the soul determines its future body, earthly or airy, heavy or light. The quality of the soul is like, I think, the whole point of the concept of honesty existing. In the Shvetashvatara Upanishad, it says, then whom there is not else higher, than whom there is not smaller, not greater, the one with the capital O, the one stands like a tree established in heaven. By him, the person, is this whole universe filled. Yeah, this is the whole thing where there was this yogi named Swami Krishnananda where he said religion is God remembering himself. That means it's like, is man living in this world, or is God living as man? Like, is man part of the world of God? Do you know? That means what is the true original site of being? In the Shvetashvatara Upanishad, it says, from Brahman's divine power comes forth all this magical show of name and form, of you and me, which casts the spell of pain and pleasure. Only when we pierce through this magic veil do we see the one who appears as many. Yeah, he's saying like there's oneness behind the duality. Dude, that's too simple to talk about. These are quotes from the Taittiriya Upanishad. All beings that exist on earth are born of food. Oh no, I just read this. What? Okay, here, Chandogya Upanishad. This is worth reading. This universe comes forth from Brahman, or Brahman, and will return to Brahman. Verily, all is Brahman. Brahman is like an ultimate archetype in Vedic thought, guys. A person is what his deep desire is. It is our deepest desire in this life that shapes the life to come. So let us direct our deepest desires to realize the self. The self with the capital S, that can be realized by the pure in heart, is life, light, space. Oh my God. The self that can be realized by the pure in heart is life, light, space, gives rise to all works, desires, odors, and all tastes, is beyond words, is joy abiding. So it's not like you just find joy, you abide by it. This is the self dwelling in my heart. It's kind of like honesty being a sort of freedom for the soul in the moment. In the Chandogya Upanishad, it says, smaller than a grain of rice, smaller than Mr.Within subscribers. The subscriber count, you know. Smaller than, I'm joking. I can't make fun of the whole cosmos, you know. Smaller than a grain of rice, smaller than a grain of barley, smaller than a mustard seed, smaller than a grain of millet, smaller even than a kernel of a grain of a millet is the self. This is the self dwelling in my heart, greater than the earth, greater than the sky, greater than all the worlds. This self that gives rise to all works, desires, odors, and all tastes, pervades the universe, is beyond words, its joy abiding, is ever present in my heart, is Brahman indeed. To him I shall attain when my ego dies. Guys, it's repeated in the books. It sounds like I'm just reading. Tijo Bindu Upanishad. I haven't heard of this one. I feel like reading actually Ramana Maharshi quotes. Ramana Maharshi was on to something. Ramana Maharshi says, "Who am I? Not the body, because it is decaying. Not the mind, because the brain will decay with the body. Not the personality nor the emotions, for these also will vanish with death." Sri Ramana Maharshi says, "No one succeeds without effort. Those who succeed owe their success to perseverance." Sri Ramana Maharshi says, "Our own self-realization is the greatest service we can render the world." Sri Ramana Maharshi says, "Silence is also conversation." If I divide the moment into the known and the unknown, that means if I consider consciousness to be a point on a single point at the center of a piece of paper, and if I draw one line in it, let's say each end of the line is arrowed, and so we have the known and the unknown to wonder about in every moment. And then we simultaneously have truth and false. So how would I say it? It's like we're the potential of meaning. It's like we're a meaningless energetic opportunity to be the greatness of the meaning. For me, I think about what would be, how advanced would an advanced civilization be. An advanced civilization would be so advanced that it is living for us far. That means, imagine we're not just living for children of future generations just 100 years from now. I'm saying till the end of time. Like, what would the greatness of the human species look like? That's like it's like a sort of mysterious legend. Every person is looking for it. Where is truth? What is truth, and why? Why is the world occurring? Like, it's fascinating. It's so fascinating that intelligence is present at all in the void. Like, can you believe the Big Bang created podcasters? Like, that is some next level, miracle level of universal intelligence, Anyways, guys, I think I should just end the talk. I'm trying to think what else I could say about levels to the mind. Okay, so interface access is a blessing. Something technology that has been an advantage through technology is that, let's say a person uses a computer, and or let's say there's something like And there's something actually, I got surprised, but there's something called like esports. And so what it is it's like man is becoming more fascinated by a cyber experience. So what it is that if we become fascinated with a cyber life, that means we have a life as a biological entity, but then there's a life as a cyber entity. And what sort of meaning that life in the cyber as a cyber entity has. These talks, when I give these Mr. Within talks, it's kind of strange because I am like the internet lives on, like could live on forever maybe, you know. Let's say the good and evil were fighting and somebody came and said, yo, yo, and the person asked let's say the greatest archetype of evil, like what, it's like, would you like to be evil in an advanced world? And the person went to the greatest archetype of good and was like, would you like to be good in the most advanced world, right? And in the most advanced world, one is beyond both of these realities. The future is the greatest journey of evolution. It's like how we're becoming it more minds than bodies. I think we're at a point where we need to document the human species incredibly. Anyways, thanks for listening, and much blessings. Namaste. Rise, mankind, rise.